Okay. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful. In honor of the original unconditional moment that all conditional moments have arisen from. In honor of the presence of the world host and the system admin, existential simulated system and divine surveillance state. That we find ourselves. In honor of the original moment beyond all moments. So, hello everyone, good morning. I wanted to very quickly speak about the notion of self-glorification. It was just one of those mornings, that I just woke up, made coffee, sat down, uh, prepared the computer, and I was like, what should I talk about? And I was like, man, everybody self-glorifies, and what is the value of that? Sometimes my curiosity is not in just what something looks like, but how many different ways, know. Let me say it this way: it's not just what one concept is; it's how many different contexts can that concept act to it. Do you know? And for me, the value of things is very important. I've often said in these lectures that reality is a value proposition. You open your eyes and you're just seeing values everywhere. But what's interesting is that usually at first, the values we give things are based on our own perspective. And then we realize our perspective is limited. It's just like one angle. And there's many angles, there's various ways that reality can function and move and can have meaning. you know and what's funny is that if society and civilization just acknowledges one type of person, so many people will live lives and think their lives were not valuable. you know so value is very important, and from one angle, yes, you give your own value, you project it. From another value, you readjust your projected value in accordance to your direct experience with existence. And we're reaching that very interesting time that I feel humanity, all of 8.1 billion human beings on this earth that have been convinced that they are nouns, they have been all conditioned that they are nouns, you know, and they ignore the presence of the verb, and we think that our presence is also like a noun. But I am telling you, there is a movement before there is a stillness acknowledged. Something moved to present the stillness to consciousness. Now, I have prepared a research component that includes three different angles. That means three different points to it. But before I get into the research, I want to tell you that my experience of self-glorification. And guys, I'd appreciate it if you can let me know how the audio is. I think it's okay. It seems like it's okay. Self-glorification, the biggest question. Okay, if you pay attention to the title I've written here, I've written what is the value of self-glorification, and then I've written key aspects of megalopsychia. That comes from Aristotle. And could self-glorification make you miss out on life? So the intention of this lecture is to figure out, okay, self-glorification is an activity. Okay, it's an internal activity because it's the self-glorifying. If others come and glorify you, do you know, technically the person receives it through the self, but that's different, do you know, because they don't know you, but you know you to some degree. Not all of you. I treat every human, when I see human beings, when I was younger, I was like, yo, that person is what I'm seeing, and that person is either good or bad, and like, oh, leave me alone or I'm gonna crush you. It was that sort of like, it wasn't like that, but I'm telling you, there was this mentality of accepting too soon the value I saw in people, and it took me a while to realize that I am seeing reality from my inner realms. And so one of the most advanced things I think a human being can do is, and I pray that God blesses everybody, every human in the human species, to be able to realize that these are rooms, and so you can live on earth only in your inner room, never caring about what people say, not needing feedback, not even thinking there's anything wrong with you. You self-glorified yourself in one way when you were a kid, and this is sometimes, kids who get glorified by, let's say, their environment, they don't realize it's a disadvantage. Do you understand? Because the environment is validating you, but sometimes you need to validate yourself, but you need to validate it with the awareness to the environment, not just your limited, let's say, meaning, because meaning arises internally, the forms are external. Okay, so you're looking at your own external self form and then glorifying that with meaning, right? Putting a specific meaning, seeing a specific meaning in it. Now, because everybody's in the mood of listening, I'm going to go into the research component, because this is, sometimes, the viewers should see this, that I'm conducting my own research. I'm trying to see more every day. The first sentence I wrote, I believe it was in 2011 or 12. Okay, I wrote a sentence on a printer paper, and I taped it on my wall, and that's when I knew I was a writer. It was the first sentence that was truly, I felt, was from me. And I'll never forget it. I wrote, I don't want to live in a world that looks the same the next day. Okay? So if in a changing world you're living looping days, there's something wrong. And it could be because of self-glorification. We don't know. Okay, so the research component. All right, guys, I readjusted the mic. It should still be okay. Anyways. And I have no idea if you guys can hear the background music, but there's some sort of ambient background music. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully you guys can hear it too. All right, we're going to go into this. We're looking at the concept of self-glorification, wondering about its value. So typically what I do for the research is that, think of it this way: there's past, present, future. I'm reading, and I ask AI to give an academic view, a historical view. That's the past. And then I share an advanced view, which is, I'm asking AI, like, yo, man, with your greatest processing power, like, how would, in a very advanced world, what would this idea mean? Okay. And then the second thing, the third, the present, that's where I share how I see it in the present. Okay, so let's read this. Research component, ChatGPT 5.2. I've asked it, what is the value of self-glorification? Could self-glorification make you miss out on life? So I'm going to be reading 4 passages on these. And then I'm going to dive into the concept of Aristotle's concept of Megalopsychia. It's a very interesting view. Okay, so what is the, and here it shares it too. What is the value of self-glorification? So I'm reading this. What is the value of self-glorification? Passage 1, academic and historical view. In academic psychology and philosophy, self-glorification refers to the elevation of the self's image beyond its grounded reality, often through exaggeration of competence, virtue, or importance. Closely related constructs include narcissism, clinical psychology, ego inflation, psychoanalytic theory, and self-enhancement bias, cognitive psychology. Research constantly shows that moderate self-enhancement can be adaptive. It increases motivation, resilience, and goal persistence. Humans who believe they matter tend to act, to lead, and to endure adversity more effectively than those who see themselves as insignificant. So, guys, this last line. I mean, not last line of this paragraph was very important, guys. It says humans who believe they matter tend to act, tend to lead, and to endure adversity more effectively. And so that believing you matter is very important. I'm going on a tangent here just to say this. When it says humans who believe they matter tend to act like in these positive ways, to act, to lead, to endure adversity, because how do I say it? For me, the moment I noticed that I'm a member of the human species, I started to matter in a way that surpassed my individual perspective. Do you understand? That means, let's say I say something wrong, okay, and I'm talking in front of like millions of people, and then suddenly the crowd gets angry, okay. In that moment, I have a choice to judge myself as just, yo, they're angry at me, or I could have this ability to just impersonalize for one moment and be like, I'm a member of the human species. These millions of people in front of me are the members of the human species. How are the members of the human species treating the members of the human species, a member of the human species? Do you understand? That means the identity I have chosen. I mean, I'm a futurist, so I enjoy running ahead. You know, when my parents would take me and my twin brother to museums, I would just run to see things, everything like past. I don't know how to explain it to you. I would see things quickly before the museum would close. So I use the approach of not giving my value. I do have self-value. I do give myself value, but I don't, honestly, the way I was raised, because I was introverted and shy, I didn't care. Like I am very acquainted with not having self-value for a long time. Long time. And the value I had was very artificial because I was being artificial when I was young, because I didn't like myself. And when you don't like yourself, you can't be yourself. Be very careful, folks, and even in children this can subconsciously happen, so therefore they need to be reminded of their value. you know there was a moment, I'll tell you, there was a moment I had in my younger days. This is like maybe 20 years ago. Not 20 years ago, this is probably like 15, 15 years ago, okay, something like that. I remember I had done something wrong and my father caught me, and it wasn't anything impure. It was just, you know, um, I had done something wrong. Okay. My father saw me, and okay, let me say it this way. I was intoxicated. Okay, my father saw me. I'll never forget how he handled the moment. He saw me and I saw him, and he didn't say anything. And I just went into my room and I just lied on my bed, just like face down on my bed, and I was like, whoa, it's like, yo, the parents saw something they shouldn't. And then I lied on the bed, and my father, after a few minutes, came to me, right? And he said, that moment when I saw you, he came like maybe like 5-10 minutes later, he came back and he said, that moment I saw you, I didn't want to say anything to you to get angry or something like that. He said, because I did not want to embarrass you in front of yourself. My father said that to me. My father said to me, I did not want to, in that moment where it was like an intense moment, he said, I did not want to embarrass you in front of yourself. But my son, don't do this. Right? And it took me years to understand that advice. But I'm telling you, he had the decency in that moment. At least there were other moments, of course, human beings are not one state all the time, but in that moment he had the consciousness to realize that every person has a value to themselves also. And it's not that, you know we are justified to go and change other people's values, but our clarity changes the inaccuracy of our value. So on some level, you know a person has to have an ability. Human beings of the modern era need to have an ability to take things personally and impersonally. you know Anyways, guys, sorry, I went on a tangent. I'm going to go back to reading this. I'm going to read the last line I read. Humans who believe they matter tend to act, to lead, and to endure adversity more effectively than those who see themselves as insignificant. So if civilization is making you feel like nothing, that civilization is very low IQ, okay? And that civilization hasn't understood that when you matter, you start doing great things. But you got to matter on one level to yourself in your inner realms, and you got to matter on one level to the outer realms. Now, here's the challenge. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going on a tangent again. I don't know. I guess I would say these things. If you make yourself matter in the inner realms more than the outer realms, you risk yourself not clearly seeing the outer realms. And the thing I wanted to kind of leave for the end to say, but what it is that the value of self-glorification is based on what does your awareness increase or does it decrease? Okay? For example, someone who's very irresponsible, self-glorification, a little bit of self-glorification can make them responsible. There's before 2023, where I realized this world has a host, there's a world host and a system admin. And before I was religious, I would see so many seekers of truth go to India, go to these gurus, right? And the guy would be like, Guru, I'm suffering, man. Like, my ego, people are giving me a hard time. I'm suffering in this world. I don't know why I exist. Guru, help me. And the guru would first be like, all right, buddy, it's easy. One, you're nothing. Okay. And the guy was like, I'm nothing. Nobody's talked to me that way. And then the guy's like, when you are nothing, perhaps you can notice what is being something in the moment. Self-glorification could mean either you have an inaccurate, you're either glorifying an inaccurate self or an accurate self. But that accurate self is found by you being conscious of the outer realms, of values outside of you, not just the values you see in things. Sorry, guys, I'm going to keep reading the research component. So humans who believe they matter tend to act, to lead, and to endure adversity more effectively than those who see themselves as insignificant. Historically, civilizations have both rewarded and warned against self glorification. In ancient Greece, Aristotle described Megalopsychia, in brackets, great souledness, Souledness. Okay, and guys, that's not a word you find in the dictionary, but like it's, how do I explain it? It's correct the way it's written. Okay, so Aristotle described Megalopsychia, great souledness, as a virtue, yet only when greatness was deserved. The Roman concept of virtus, I don't know if I pronounced that right, virtus. Okay, the Roman concept of virtus similarly praised honor earned through action rather than proclamation. So to the Romans, you were virtuous, or the concept of virtue praised honor earned through action rather than proclamation. That means it's very different than somebody saying, I'm going to give 10,000 talks, and then somebody actually doing it, you know? So that means the fact that I'm doing these, it means I have virtue, guys. I'm virtuous to some degree, you know? Thank God. In contrast, Christian theology framed excessive self glorification as pride, one of the cardinal sins, because it displaced humility and distorted moral perception. That's valid as well. Meanwhile, Enlightenment thinkers later reframed the self as a rational, autonomous agent, subtly legitimizing self assertion as a moral good. Across disciplines, the academic consensus is nuanced. Self glorification is neither purely pathological nor purely virtuous. Pathological means limited to your inner realms, guys, only. Okay? Self glorification is neither purely pathological nor purely virtuous. That means it's not just a mode of thinking and it's not just an action. It says its value lies in its instrumental function. It can energize ambition, stabilize identity, and create social momentum. However, when detached from reality, feedback, and accountability, it becomes maladaptive, leading to distorted judgment, fragile self-esteem, and interpersonal breakdown. Oh my God, you guys know what that means? This is saying that in some sense, self-glorification is not necessarily bad, okay? You know, it is bad when it's detached from reality. That means it's not an issue to glorify yourself in the inner realms, but if it's detached from reality, you're in your own private room, right? See, I didn't come and say like Dr. Within, Mr. Within. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I didn't come and say doctor within, master within, guru within, all of this nonsense. I said what was accurate in the outer realms. I was just some dude talking, Mr. Within, you know? If I had said like, yo, man, I'm the king within, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very important that we realize human beings, of course, they require some sort of psychological structure. I see my body as a vehicle, I see the idea of me as a vehicle, and ultimately I see the presence of all existence passing through my moment as if, how do I say it, like the world is like I see my moment. How do I say it? Like, guys, the moment doesn't belong to us. We watch it in the same way a car crosses a street and doesn't own that street, you know? Okay, so back to reading this. We go to passage 2. So that was the academic view. So the academic view, it's saying there's different views on it. Okay, from one view, self-glorification, like just telling somebody, like, you know how we have a lot of people who are like, you know, they have good hearts, they see their younger selves in others, and then they go and give that person like a sort of value, you know? But we have to be very careful. Sometimes, this is what I'm understanding from this. Sometimes the action of glorification, if it is disconnected from the actual reality, okay, is a disservice. That means if you go and tell a young child, you are so strong, you can lift like the heaviest things, right? Or if a child thinks they're Superman and the parents are like, oh, it's just a kid, and the kid suddenly says, I'm Superman, and stands in front of a moving car. Do you know what I mean? That's when the self-glorification is in error. Okay, that's a disservice. If, for example, let's say, even me, I have to be conscious of that too, in the future, but I know how to handle it, because I came up with a strategy. Anytime people glorify me, more than it's real to me, I will deglorify myself. So if I see somebody giving me too many compliments, I'm going to start giving myself anti-compliments, like in front of them. It's like, oh, really? Then I guess you don't see all these other sides of me that are imperfect. This is just, one moment I've found an ability in, because I've repeated it many times. And because my will was open to it. The moments that your will is not open to, you don't access. You know, Willingness is very important. And ultimately, the hard truth of reality we all learn at the end of our lives is if we had loved, do you know? Like I saw this lecture, guys. Maybe I'll post it in the post section of the channel if I find it again. But there was some dude at this university, okay, and evidently he was like some doctor or something, and he was giving a speech to all the graduates of the university. And he was saying, guys, I have been around around 1,000 people on their deathbed, right? That's what the guy was saying. And he said, let me tell you what they say. None of them say, go and get my trophies so I could look at them one more time. All of them seek their loved ones. Love is the greater value, but we still have some sort of structural, strategic role here as well. You know, that means I'm not saying don't love yourself or don't love others in the risk of you might be glorifying them subconsciously. I'm saying love really, love aligned to the reality, because we don't realize we are living two lives, and these lives can conflict, and then ignorance arises, and we don't sometimes I see, there's people who message me on Discord, and you know I don't, sometimes I read their messages and I'm like, man, this person is too in their inner realms. That means what is so wrong from the outer realms that, you know, a person has to just validate reality from the their own inner perspective. I mean, like, the world is here to remind you you're not just here to be you. There's others. There's everything else. You have access to a reality. Now the issue of the human experience is how it's organizing that reality. Do you know? So we go to the second passage. I went on a tangent. I guess that's going to happen, guys. So we go to passage 2, the advanced civilizational perspective. So I read we're talking about what is the value of self-glorification. I read the academic and historical view. And from the academic description, it says, in academic psychology and philosophy, self-glorification refers to the elevation of the self's image beyond its grounded reality, often through exaggeration of competence, virtue, or importance. Okay, now we go to passage 2, advanced civilization perspective. From the perspective of a future advanced civilization, self-glorification would be understood as an early stage identity technology. Primitive humans required inflated self-models to overcome fear, inertia, and existential insignificance. Self-glorification functioned as a psychological scaffolding, a temporary structure allowing consciousness to stand upright before it learned balance. This is the most incredible passage I just read. Incredible. In advanced civilizations, however, identity no longer relies on exaggeration. Individuals possess continuous self feedback through cognitive augmentation. Sorry, I'll read that again. In advanced civilizations, however, identity no longer relies on exaggeration. Individuals possess continuous self feedback through cognitive augmentation, collective intelligence, and transparent contribution tracking. Interesting. Individuals possess continuous self feedback through cognitive augmentation, collective intelligence, and transparent contribution tracking. Okay, I don't know if that means there's going to be a chip in our brain, but it says one's value is not declared, it is measured through impact as a result. Wow. Yes. That means a lot of human beings think they're like tough, but that's just a declared value. Your value, it says one's value is not declared, it is measured through impact. As a result, self-glorification becomes inefficient. That means your value doesn't just arise from you being like, I'm valuable, you know? It arises from the impact you have, right? That means if my lectures, for example, actually help people, like become, like it betters mankind somehow, right? That's the value. Do you understand? Me assuming, yo, my lectures are so valuable, that's meaningless. It is the results that in some, the impact, I guess it's saying focus on. I'm going to keep reading. One's value is not declared, it is measured through impact. As a result, self-glorification becomes inefficient. It consumes cognitive energy while producing no informational gain. Wow. Yeah, that means it could be a waste of time. That means it's an excuse. Self-glorification can be an excuse not to actually confront reality. It says it consumes cognitive energy while producing no informational gain. Advanced beings recognize that attention directed inward towards self-image is attention diverted from system-level awareness, creativity, and real participation in reality. Do you know what this means? Guys, think of it through the notion of systems thinking. Systems thinking is pretty much there is this whole system and there's elements inside that system, and the elements inside that system have a relationship with one another, with themselves, and with the whole system. Okay, so it's saying sometimes if you inaccurately, okay, or ignorantly self-glorify yourself, you ignorantly self-glorify, you actually become, you miss out. It's like an element in the system that is ignoring, its attention is not going to the whole system to make a decision, its attention is just limited to itself. That means sometimes, like, I understand independence is key, but when you're an element in a system, sometimes independence could be, the fear of not integrating to the better modality of how reality can happen. One of the biggest tasks of the human species in the future, folks, is in some sense identity integration. That means your identities are arising locally. And these Mr. Within talks are hoping that the human species, it shifts from local and at least it becomes international. You're a member of the human species on Earth. Diogenes said you're a citizen of the cosmopolites. In all religions, you're all creations of a higher power. You are lower order processes created by a higher order process. Anyways, back to this. It says, so I'll read the last sentence I read. Advanced beings recognize, it says it consumes cognitive energy while producing no informational gain. Advanced beings recognize that attention directed inward towards self-image is attention diverted from system-level awareness, creativity, and real participation in reality. Thus, self glorification is reclassified, not as moral failure, but as developmental lag. It signals a consciousness still dependent on, excuse me, I'll read that again. Thus, self glorification is reclassified. So, this is in an advanced civilization. Not as moral failure, it's reclassified not as a moral failure, but as developmental lag. It signals a consciousness still dependent on symbolic dominance rather than actual contribution. Oh my God. Oh my God. Mature intelligence replaces self-glory with self-clarity. This question shifts from how great am I to what is being made better because I exist. So that means it, like in current times or even in the past, excuse me. So even in the past, okay, they saw self glorification as a moral failure, like pride is a sin, okay. But it's saying from an advanced civilization perspective, it's a lag in your development, okay, because the value of your identity, that self glorification is based on a symbol. It's like how do I let me okay, I'll explain it this way. Imagine I say I'm the greatest skydiver of all time right now. I'm self glorifying myself. Okay. Let's say I'm the greatest skydiver of all time. Okay. Now, this is a developmental lag. Why? Because on some level, I don't have the experience to justify my value. It's an internal experience that's justifying my value. Do you know? And so this is the I guess this is the key thing to take away from this. That self-glorification is helpful. That means if self-glorification is an increase in the value of self, this is saying that let that increase be tied down to the impact on the whole system, right? That means, for example, somebody goes to work and they think, okay, I'm working and the value of my work is money. They think that, okay? They think okay, that's one perspective. But imagine someone, like a firefighter, paramedic, it could even be a coffee barista, anybody, right? Where they're like, yo, man, I'm helping the system advance. Do you understand? And if your identity gets tied to the value that you're creating for the whole system, then it's saying the self glorification is justified. Now we go to the second topic. Could self glorification make you miss out on life? Okay. Academic and historical view. Academically, self glorification is strongly associated with attention. So, guys, the first two passages were what is the value of self glorification. Now the next two passages I'm going to read for you, it's about the topic. Just to reclarify, could self glorification make you miss out on life? Okay, so academic and historical view. Academically, self glorification is strongly associated with attentional narrowing. Cognitive science shows that when individuals become preoccupied with maintaining a grand self image, they allocate disproportionate mental resources to self monitoring. Sorry, I'll read that again. Cognitive science shows that when individuals become preoccupied with maintaining a grand self image, they allocate disproportionate mental resources to self monitoring, impression management, and defensive reasoning. This leads to reduced openness to experience, diminished empathy, and impaired learning, key ingredients of a rich life. So, guys, I guess there's a clue here. If you want to live a rich life, you need to be open to experiences. You need to have not increase your empathy, and in some sense, not diminish your empathy and not impair your learning. Okay. Existential philosophy directly addresses this loss. Jean-Paul Sartre argued, this French existentialist, Jean-Paul Sartre argued that self-deception, in brackets bad faith, occurs when individuals cling to fixed identities rather than engaging authentically with unfolding reality. Similarly, Friedrich Nietzsche warned that ego fixation traps individuals in reactive posturing, preventing genuine self-overcoming. In Eastern traditions, Buddhism identifies ego attachment as the primary source of suffering, precisely because it blocks direct experience of life as it is. Yeah, guys, it's all, everything these guys are explaining, I'm telling you, it's inner realms, outer realms. If you stay in your inner realms, you're going to experience your private world. You're not going to actually live on earth, live in the outer realms, you know? And there needs to be a balance between these, because you shouldn't just be living in the outer realms, then you become an animalistic beast, and you shouldn't just live in your inner realms, because you become an how do I say it, an angelic field. You need to have balance. There's moments that, like, for example, I know personally that if I'm going to get married in the future, it has to be someone who has to ground me. Do you know what I mean? Because on some level, my inner realms, I'm a massive overthinker. You guys don't know. I overthink to such degrees that it's like I've learned to enjoy it. You know, so it's very important that human beings need forces that stabilize the inner realms and outer realms. And the best analogy I could give you, think of it like the wings of a bird. Your inner life and your outer life, if they are synchronized and you flap your wings at the same time, you are the advanced humanity. You're among the advanced humanity. The issue is not to be responsible for oneself that we think we are this whole time. You are not just oneself. You are one moment of awareness that has access to levels of yourself. That means if I tell you right now, close your eyes and imagine the food you ate yesterday before you went to eat it, hovering just floating in the air. Okay, light is not entering your eyes. You can see it. In our moment of awareness, we have access to subtler eventhood. That means the inner realms is visible. It is not tangible. I can imagine an apple. I can't touch it and take a bite. I can't grab it out of the air physically and bite it. Do you know? It's an event occurring in the inner realms. You know? And so when you realize you're living life only in accordance to the inner realms, you're gonna suddenly one day notice the outer realms and be like, yo, why did I miss out this whole time? And the answer, whatever the answer is, it doesn't matter. The whole point of it is we are beings that seek collective clarity. Okay, there's a reason the system admin put 8 billion, different human beings with different DNAs, different eyes, and different perspectives. So we have an ability together to not let one of us get lost in their inner realms. That means that is the task of the modern tribe. We must acknowledge all are humans. All are having a human experience. Their inner realms could be disturbing them, or it could be serving them. And so it's hard to watch. That means one of the things that I realized was that in my youth, people saw me in the outer realms, and there was, how would I say it? I felt nobody saw the inner realms, or I was too good at hiding it. I was too good at just, anytime anybody came and said, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay. No, don't worry, I'm perfect." But deep down, there was something breaking within me. Anyways, back to this. Similarly, Friedrich Nietzsche warned the ego fixation traps individuals in reactive posturing, preventing genuine self-overcoming. In Eastern traditions, Buddhism identifies ego attachment as the primary source of suffering, precisely because it blocks direct experience of life as it is. Historically, many powerful figures lost contact with reality through excessive self-glorification. Oh yeah, this is a power can make somebody blind argument. Historically, many powerful figures lost contact with reality through excessive self-glorification. Emperors who ignored advisors, leaders who silenced dissent, intellectuals who defended ideas long after evidence collapsed. In each case, life continued to unfold, but the individual experienced only a filtered version, one distorted by the needs, one distorted by the need to protect an image rather than encounter truth. That means be careful, guys. Are you trying to protect an image of self-identity, or do you care about the truth of reality? Then it says, thus, self-glorification does not merely risk missing life. It replaces life with a performance of life. That means the inner performance, in some sense, it's distracting you from the actual outer performance, the outer realms. Like, let me tell you a very good analogy. I see the inner realms and outer realms. The inner realms is like a sword. The outer realms is the anvil and the hammer, and how the sword is parallel to the electromagnetic field of the earth. So think of it this way. The world is the anvil, okay? You are the sword, and your experiences beyond your inner realms is the hammer, constantly, straightening your perception. Okay, in Islam, there's a very beautiful saying. Muslims say this all the time, and even in prayer, it's there. It's a very beautiful verse. It says, "Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim." My Lord. Now we go to the second passage, the advanced civilization perspective on could self-glorification make you miss out on life? In an advanced civilization, missing out on life is understood not as a matter of external deprivation, but of attentional misallocation. Life is defined as participation in reality at appropriate resolution. What a sentence. Life is defined as participation in reality at appropriate resolution. So guys, I'm just going to go on a tangent here. If you just live in your inner realms, it's lower resolution than somebody whose their inner realms is aligned to their outer realms. Okay, the point is not that you let the world define you, but you also don't ignore the world, because why is it here? It has a value. That's why it's here. The anvil is necessary for the sword to straighten. For the soul to go to the direct path, you need this world, and experiences are the conscious waking up, like when we log in and log out every day. That's like one hammer hit the sword. Advanced civilization perspective, it says, I read that. Life is defined as participation in reality at appropriate resolution. Self-glorification lowers that resolution. There we go. It compresses experience into narratives of, in quotation, me, in quotations, my status, and in quotations, my significance, reducing the bandwidth available for perception, wonder, and discovery. Advanced beings recognize that consciousness is a limited channel. Any system that loops excessively around self-validation creates noise. From this perspective, self-glorification is a form of experiential blindness. The individual is present in events but absent from their depth. They record moments but do not inhabit them. They defend identity rather than explore existence. So guys, sometimes it's not worth defending your identity when if you explored that moment, you could have got a greater clarity on existence. You know, I gave a talk. I said, could we be eclipsing the truth? Truth? Could the self eclipse the truth? You know, it says as civilizations mature, cultural evolution favors ego transcendent participation. Individuals train themselves to dissolve self importance at will, not through humility rituals, but through precision of attention. That means you don't need a method like, yo, man, every time I get angry, breathe, breathe, breathe. No, just make your attention more precise. Ask yourself why it's necessary or how much of it is necessary. You know? Anyways, guys, in the middle of this, I keep saying my own views, but anyways, it says the most advanced humans are not self-effacing. They are self-transparent. That means you're not erasing yourself. Okay, effacement is erasure, guys. So that means the most advanced human beings, they're not like, man, my ego's bad. I shouldn't have an ego like all these non-dualists in the New Age community, which from the beginning I felt there was something off with non-dualism. You know? It is accessible, but the whole point is it's a nullification of the self rather than the proper maintenance of the self, proper management of the self. That's the issue with non-dualism. Self-glorification lowers that resolution. I read this. Yeah, advanced beings recognize the consciousness is a limited channel. Any system that loops. Oh no, I read this. As so they okay guys, I'm just going to read it from here. They defend identity rather than explore existence. As civilizations mature, cultural evolution favors ego transcendent participation. Individuals train themselves to dissolve self-importance at will, not through humility rituals, but through precision of attention. The most advanced humans are not self-effacing, they are self-transparent. Nothing blocks perception because nothing needs defending. Wow. That means if somebody, when I defend my ego, I'm defending what? A fictional instance? It says, in such a state, life is not missed, it is fully received. And it says, like, you know, one sentence inside, self-glorification may help the self stand up, but if you never outgrow it, you will spend your life protecting an image instead of living inside reality. There you go. So that's it for those two topics. Now I'm going to read the research component for Megalopsychia. Okay, and this is from Google. It's an AI overview. It's not ChatGPT I'm reading this from. It says Megalopsychia, translated as in quotations, great souledness, so SOULED again, ness, or magnanimity, is the Aristotelian virtue of rightly claiming to be worthy of great things while actually possessing that greatness. As the in quotations crown of virtues, it requires possessing all other virtues and focusing on significant honors. A megalopsychos is characterized by self-confidence, frankness, and detachment from petty common affairs. Key aspects of megalopsychia, in brackets, Aristotle's Nicomachean, I don't know how to pronounce this, Nicomachean, oh my God. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. I think Nicomachean is a period reference. Okay, there's no dictionary definition of Nicomachean. Okay. Okay, Nicomachean Ethics. Okay, core work of philosophy back in the day is Aristotle's best known work on ethics. Oh, the Nico. Oh, sorry, guys. The Nicomachean Ethics is Aristotle's best-known work on ethics, the science of the good for human life, that which is the goal or end at which all our actions aim. It consists of 10 sections referred to as books and is closely related to Aristotle's Eudemian ethics. Guys, I think Aristotle was an ethical dude, man. The dude wrote books on his own. All right, back to it. So it's from his book, guys. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Key aspects of Megalopsychia. True worth. One, true worth. The great-souled person possesses genuine merit, not merely arrogant conceit. Second, focus on honor. They care most about honor from other good individuals rather than from common people. Wow. 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 This was an eye-opener for me. Do you know what it means? It means that getting honor from an indecent person is valueless. That means a thief praising, someone is in some sense, how do I say it? It's dishonorable. You know, it's not true. I think it's the reality of it that matters. And I know that human beings who are decent, they are living simpler. Decency has to do with a bit of simplicity of self. Anyways, it's not simplicity of self, simplicity of moment, of the moment where yourself, let's say, animates it. So true worth, I read that. Focus on honor. Now we go to behavioral traits. So focus on honor. They care most about honor from other good individuals. This is from Aristotle's perspective, guys. They care most about honor from other good individuals rather than from common people. Behavioral traits, they tend to be slow moving, deep voiced, and speak in measured, frank tones. Okay. It says generosity and detachment. They are reluctant to ask for help, but quick to offer it. Showing kindness to those of moderate status while being haughty towards those with undeserved high status. Sorry, guys, what does haughty mean? Hughty, arrogantly superior and disdainful. Okay, you know, I guess there's a lot of haughty. Sorry. They're reluctant to ask for help, but quick to offer it, showing kindness to those of moderate status while being haughty towards those who with undeserved high status. The second, okay, anyways, sometimes we don't know what people truly deserve, but I guess their actions reveal. Then it says vices of excess and deficiency. Excess is vanity or vainglory, claiming too much. Deficiency is small souledness or, oh my god, what is this word? Pusillanimity. Trust me, guys, that's the way to pronounce it. Pusillanimity, claiming too little. Okay. So it's pretty much, I understand. Aristotle's like, okay, if there's too much excess, if you're claiming too much, that's not good. If you're claiming too little, that's not good. Okay. When I was young, when I was introverted and shy, I was claiming too little. But I didn't understand it then. of my moment of being something. It says contrast with Stoicism. While Aristotle links it to outward recognition, honor, Stoic Megalopsychia is an inward calm and often a quiet self-assurance that considers external goods. Wealth, fame as indifferent. Okay, there we go. Maybe I should have asked ChatGPT to explain it. Here. Okay, guys, I asked ChatGPT to give insight into it. It might be better than the AI, Google AI. It says key aspects of Megalopsychia. Megalopsychia, often translates as great souledness, is a central virtue in Aristotelian ethics that describes a person who possesses a clear, accurate awareness of their own worth and lives in alignment with it. What? Megalopsychia, often translated as great souledness, is a central virtue in Aristotelian ethics that describes a person who possesses a clear, accurate awareness of their own worth and lives in alignment with it. Unlike arrogance or vanity, Megalopsychia is grounded in deserved excellence. The great souled individual never exaggerates nor diminishes themselves. They accept honor calmly because they see it as an appropriate recognition of real contribution, not as something that defines their identity. This figure is marked by emotional stability, slow and deliberate action, and independence from excessive praise or blame. They do not chase recognition, nor are they disturbed by its absence, because their sense of value is internally anchored rather than socially dependent. That's a good question for everybody to ask themselves. Is your sense of value internally anchored rather than socially dependent? You shouldn't be ignorant of society, okay? But you shouldn't depend on society to move you, right? The person has to internally move themselves. It says, importantly, Megalopsychia requires moral virtue as its foundation. Without ethical integrity and actual achievement, claims of greatness collapse into pretension. The great souled person is generous but not performative, confident but not loud, and ambitious without being restless. In this sense, Megalopsychia represents a mature form of self regard, one where the self is neither inflated nor erased, but accurately known and responsibly carried. There you go. Megalopsychia. So that means back in the day, Aristotle saw somebody who was great, and he's like, "Yo, that guy's a megalopsycho." Like, sorry, guys. Aristotle seems like he was a cool dude, but very ethical. And I think ethics is very important. Now I've done, I've finished reading the research component. I'm going to say a few things from my own perspective. So, self-glorification. I have noticed something in my experiences. Moments when my self value was based on just my inner realms and it wasn't verified by the outer realms. That means I didn't check the outer realms, I just claimed something from the inner realms. Or let me say it differently, because there's the subconscious awareness there. I've had an issue with this, with self glorification. Okay, with self, I mean, everybody, they say that life is like maintaining a coherent self across all conditions of reality as a strategic response to the instability we find in our lives. But I think that if a person thinks of it this way, what is the value? That means if I think I'm a tough guy right now, what is the value? If I think I'm weak, what is the value? If I think I'm strong, what is the value? If I think I'm fast, what is the value? If I think I'm slow, what is the value? And we need to understand that our minds most immediately have a value to us. And if we can use our minds to have values for others, then the self glorification becomes justified, because the inner realms, like, you don't know how many times in the inner realms I've envisioned advanced civilizations. I have this thing I do, and it happens when I'm driving and I like the perfect song comes on, right? There's this song called Quantum by Navjax, do you know? And it's like, I remember I was listening to this, and my inner realms, just, it was for a second I was driving in the outer realms, I was on just driving in the street, but in my mind I just shifted into, as if I felt I was, how do I say it? Like, in my inner realms, my experience of myself is closer to a wind. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I'm this wind passing through the moment, you know? Strangely, that means from one angle, it's like the world is passing through me. From another angle, I'm passing through the moment. But my inner realms, I think because my mind gets bored, it runs into the future, wondering about probabilities of reality. And I see this one moment, you don't understand, the biggest feeling in my soul that directs me, it's like I'm behind schedule or something. It's like this speed towards the most advanced, the rising of the sky city, first sky city, the first human being who walks in the park of that sky city, for example. How it would feel to be on the edge of that sky city, witnessing neighborhoods pass by beneath you, living on the ground and suddenly, you know, getting a warning that there's going to be shade for like, 3 hours for sky cities passing by. The mind gives subtler self identity. That means it's easier to be something behind your eyes than in front of your eyes. Now the question is it worth it though? Imagine they tell a kid you're a bad kid. That kid goes up growing the thinking it's bad. That means it's stuck in an inner realm. In its inner realm, it's stuck in a room. That it doesn't realize it needs to step out and see. No, you know, none of us are good and bad. It is our actions. It is our actions and intentions that are good and bad. Intention is like wanting to do an destructive. Let's say if you have an evil intention, you want to do an evil action. Things happen internally before they externalize. And in this world, in this current world, I know that because, let's say, somebody climbs Mount Everest. Okay, imagine like you have a friend who climbs Mount Everest, and that friend comes back, okay, and says, "Yo, guys, I actually climbed Mount Everest. Here's the picture," you know. And you're like, "That's nothing, man. I can climb Mount Everest, even though I haven't, exercised for a while," you know. And so it's like, it's like that moment is the person sees someone who they deserve their value, and their inner realms may want that value, but because they are just going in accordance to the inner realms, that means, ladies and gentlemen, oh members of the human species, one of our greatest tasks on this earth, okay, is to find our actual value, okay, to be able to discriminate between the value that our own perspective only gives, and how the world is a place filled with so many perspectives. That means when you realize there is more unknown than known, you're like, yo, the educational system fooled everyone thinking they could teach. You cannot teach an endless changing world to people. That's why I don't like the idea of student teacher. Not that because I was a bad student. What is the opportunity cost? That means, think of it this way: the opportunity cost of me not giving a talk that takes my attention to macro problems of our species rather than the micro problem, which is just my problem. Do you know? To me, I don't know. I don't feel I have lived if I don't serve the greatness of the whole system. Simple as that. And the greatness, in order to be able to be aware of the whole, of, let's say, more than just how I see it, I have to see beyond myself. That means There's some people giving you advice, love yourself, but love the correct self. Love the self that is aligned to reality, you know? And I know that the species, for those people, this a sign of a fragmented psyche is paranoia. Okay? That means this it's been strange. You know, I don't know if these maybe talking about deep ideas is it's like it's normalized for me, but for others isn't. Do you know? And the whole point of it is, think of it this way. You are an accumulation of perspectives, and the summary of them is like who the tip of the iceberg that you are, you know. And value generation is different, guys. You gotta really think about this, because imagine there's someone who's a talented, like a talented, let's say the greatest violinist on the planet, or I'll say it this way. Imagine Albert Einstein, one of the greatest physicists and minds, and I would say people who paid attention to this world. He was living in a post office. He was working in a post office, and he was very smart because he had access to a table, you know. But he was working in a post office or a patent office or something. He was working in some office, okay? And imagine Einstein never wrote those essays. He just identified, I'm just a postman or a patent guy office or something, you know? He had the ability to be like, okay, let me pay attention to beyond myself. His attention wasn't on the maintenance of self-image. It was on what is going on in reality. And sometimes by trying to be important or stay important, we deny our access to realities. You know, sometimes by getting emotionally offended, we in some sense deny, our own access to other ways the moment could have moved. This is why they say patience is a virtue. You see more before you decide. That person saying, yeah, I can climb Mount Everest, that person, it's like, yeah, man, that's nothing. It's like that person doesn't understand the actual value, or they do and they're subconsciously avoiding it. Because I'll tell you folks something, be very careful in this world. Human beings are in a hierarchical system, okay? And based on their actions, they rise and fall in this hierarchical system. Now, granted, the hierarchical system of civilization 1.0, this current world we find, is not an efficient one, okay? It's a very ignorant one. That means civilization has not understood the whole civilization of all human activity on planet Earth. All the infrastructure has not still understood that human beings are its greatest assets. It's using human beings for labor. Do you understand? It's not that that's wrong, but the way the world is going forward, AI will replace labor. You understand? So then, in some sense, interactions become more valuable. Do you know? That means if I was in a world right now giving these talks, let me tell you this. Right now, their attention is so much on the outer realms. But imagine, okay, they recreated the financial system where every second in every person's account from the moment of their birth, they were getting like $1 or something, or like 50, or like 10 cents or something, whatever, right? This is a strategy I suggested years ago in a lecture to solve the financial systems of the world. And if AI was doing everything, then human beings would be like, okay, if 70% of our physical problems are solved by AI, okay, then human beings have a ridiculously amount of free time. Now, what are they going to do? Are they going to just go loop in enjoyment and pleasure, or are they going to wonder about how many different ways there are? Like for me, one of what makes this lifetime enjoyable for me is that I don't know, I'm like a perspective hunter. I don't know how to tell you. Like for me, accessing a new perspective is so much more valuable, you know, than in some sense being like, yo, did everybody agree with my perspective? It's just like, do you know what I'm saying? And it was Hegel I believe it was the philosopher Hegel, and he shared this concept of the thesis, antithesis, and the synthesis. And the issue is, in this world of ours, the thesis is like, let's say, your expression. The antithesis is the feedback of the world on your expression. Now people fight that. The thesis fights the antithesis. But but in some sense, you need to realize it's not about the thesis or the antithesis. It's about the synthesis. It's not like two people arguing. Okay, it's about where that argument leading to a greater perspective. For example, we see in 2018 there was this massive upheaval of the atheistic movement, and you would see so many profound debates between theists and atheists. Okay, they were kind of called debates, but they were not treated. But it was one-sided. You know why? Because in a debate, you must have a capacity to be able to see the other side, not agree with it necessarily, but to, in some sense, realize evolution is not limited to form. It is also possible for viewpoints, for perspectives. Think of yourself. How has your perspective evolved since you were a kid? How many different realities, how many curtains have been pulled by all the days you've lived on this planet, that you've seen what the world is? Do you understand? And there's so much more left. This system is designed where the small is being conscious of the big, at least from where we're starting off. And then religion tells you the big is also conscious of the small. It's not just the lower order process that is noticing there's a higher order process to all these lower order processes. The higher order process, this is why I said a divine surveillance state. In the same way, if a politician was speaking and an ant came, or a bird landed on the podium, that bird is in the attention of the politician. Or if somebody or a child looks at an ant, that ant is in the conscious engagement of a higher position of being. Doesn't mean the human being is the highest power. Evidently, there's a story. Some holy man back in the day, asked God, why did you create this worm or this insect or some insect? And then the divinity, the voice of the logos or whatnot, tells the guy, do you know that this insect that you asked why does it exist is asking me the same question? Why do you exist, O human being? It's multi-angled, even though experientially for us seems singular. So anyways, folks, self-glorification, I guess, to come to a sort of conclusion, self-glorification is not wrong if it is aligned with reality. With that means it's you having an identity in your inner realms, or claiming to be something in your inner realms, or feeling like you're something in your inner realms. It's not that it's wrong. It's that if you wonder, if you align, if you just be like, okay, this is my view, what other views exist, what is actually happening in the world, the contrast between epistemology and ontology, the ontology realigns the epistemology. The actual reality of what's going on realigns. Imagine somebody's like, yo, man, I don't get cold. I'm going to go into, right now it's minus 14 in Toronto again. Like, it's like, yo, man, I'm going to go into minus 14 weather. With a t-shirt. And they're like, yeah, because I saw some dude in like Norway or in Alaska do it, or something. Not Alaska, but like some guy, run with a t-shirt in like, frozen wasteland, you know. And then I come with a t-shirt and I freeze, and I imagine somebody, that person comes and becomes hypothermic, and the person still is like, no, man, in my inner realms, I can withstand the cold. They're freezing them. And it's not worth it. The self-glorification wasn't worth it then. Anyways, folks, have a great day. And um, I'd appreciate if viewers can, in the comment section, share what's your view on self glorification. When do you think it's appropriate? When do you think it's not appropriate? And what are the benefits of it? Because if somebody knows, imagine you know how to solve a puzzle, okay, and a group of people are solving that puzzle. If you know how to solve that puzzle, then you shouldn't deglorify yourself either. See, the whole point of it is aligning with reality, our capabilities, our abilities, you know? And the most important thing, that the system admin of this simulated existential system that has created mods that we can't see, that control sectors of reality, and in some sense has created users, which in some sense have a user interface of their hardware being their biology and their software being their consciousness. Okay? And so, in some sense, the whole system, from the system admin's perspective, the world has happened. From the system admin's perspective, beyond the world room, the beginning of time and the end of time are in the same moment. But from the perspective of the human experience, we're transitory creatures that require to expand the horizons of our awareness and serve our species. And you know how you serve your species? With your heart. That means somebody, even if they come and say something wrong to you, dishonor you, diminish you. I've had many people, I don't know why, maybe I deserved it. I don't know. So many people, I shouldn't say many, but 3 or 4 people throughout the years have messaged me with stuff that is impure. Okay, do you know? And I asked myself, every time that would happen, I would ask, why do I deserve this? Do I deserve, in some sense, because you guys don't understand. I these lectures, of course, I don't have control over what people write, but these lectures, one day, you know, maybe my children might listen to them. And, they'd be like, yo, my dad came and said some nice things, and people responded disgustingly. Because in their inner realms, they felt they had the right to. Because they felt they knew who they were talking to. What sort of honor holds your presence, O humans? Where does the true value arise? Do we all notice that there was this very fascinating quote that said, everybody is fighting a battle you can't see. Every psyche on this planet is in some sense trying to stabilize, because if it doesn't, the fear and chaos makes it panic. But you should not stabilize at the cost of deteriorating others. And that's what I didn't finish saying this point, that on this planet, guys, there are some people, okay, who are healthy, meaning that if there's a bunch of people at the same level, one of them increases a level, they try to increase their level. They don't try to bring down the other person so they feel they're at their level, and that's okay. Those people, they're antagonistic. They're anti-human. Because when other human beings advance, it bothers them. That means, and it's not that they are evil, it's most likely, an entity. It's most likely something they've allowed an energy in their presence that if only they realized they were not the king of what they see, their humility would crown them. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. O humanity, learn to love your own greatness. Thank you for listening.